In this episode of The Bear Roars, Dan Caruso sits down with Steve Redfearn, Chief of Police for the City of Boulder, for a look at what it means to lead a law enforcement agency in today's climate. Steve shares his journey from the front lines of the Aurora theatre shooting to navigating the public and political pressures of becoming Boulder's chief. He opens up about the trauma police face, how his mindset shifted after decades in Aurora, and why he's focused on modernising the department while staying grounded in community trust and officer wellness. They cover the unexpected impact of the Boulder Police Foundation, how new technologies like AI and drones are changing police work, and the continued effort to solve the John Benet Ramsey case. Let's poke the bear to kick off the conversation.
Chief Redfearn, I am so looking forward to this. In fact, we had this scheduled previously, but then the Sundance Film Festival kind of got in the way of it.
Yes.
But I'm so looking forward to spending time sharing you with the audience, because I've gotten to know you pretty well over the last, especially year or so.
Yeah.
And want to bring you to life in front of our broader friends at Boulder and Boulder County in general.
Awesome. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So we started to get involved with the Boulder Police really in about the 2020, 2021 timeframe. We were having some discussion around our foundation and what we want to support, while also observing the period of time this country went through, kind of COVID strangeness, including defund the police and things associated with that. And I remember us having a conversation, Cindy, my wife, me, my son Danny, and others, about we really need to show more support for our local police, our local people we depend on. And Cindy ran with the ball. We had a conversation. We all expressed intent, but Cindy went forward and took action. And she got involved, and she started to learn what was really going on. She found out, I think at the time, the foundation was just an idea. The police foundation was an idea. I don't think it really got solidified at that point.
Right.
So she jumped in, got involved. We got involved as a foundation. She got very involved in the annual gala event.
Yeah.
And since then, and through that process, got to know kind of the situation you were going through at the time and been able to follow your journey. So first of all, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank your department, and thank everyone out there who has our backs.
Yeah, thank you. And it's been, so much has happened since 2020 in our profession and in general. And I remember the first time I met Cindy, just kind of blown away by just how amazing she was and the support that both of you shown, and then the people you've introduced us to. And just it has been such a great experience for us when it's so hard to retain cops in the environment that we've had in the last few years, when they see how much support is in the community, and when people like you all in your foundation and others, and now with the foundation, the Boulder Police Foundation, it's obviously helpful on the ground level, but for the support that our officers have seen through that has been amazing for us, and really helped. You hear a lot of bad stuff out there, but when you really look at how much support we have, it's incredible. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, well, appreciate that. I'm on the easy side of that equation. It's easier to support than it is to do the heavy lifting, which is what you guys do, including putting your lives in danger, and not just physical danger, which is gigantic enough, but also the personal exposure that you have in kind of the broader climate. So when we first met you, you weren't the permanent police chief.
Correct.
But you were going through a process that was quite chaotic at the time.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, about where you were at that time, and maybe that will lead us to talk about kind of your background. Well, prior to that, what led you to be a cop?
Sure.
What led you to get to Boulder?
Yeah.
And how you ended up in the interim position you were at. So let's start with the interim position you were at.
Sure.
and what was that environment? What was that all about?
Yeah, so I'll back up one step prior to that. I came to Boulder PD in 2021 as deputy chief. I can talk more about my background, but I retired from the Aurora Police Department after 23 years. A lot of interesting things at the time going on that led me here. So I had about two.
I do want to talk about those if you're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I had about 2 years as deputy chief here, and I think I first met Cindy when I was deputy chief of operations. The good thing was with my transition from Aurora to Boulder, two very different cities, was I had a couple years as deputy chief to kind of really get acclimated here. in Boulder. And then when Chief Harold, our former chief, got a federal job and left, I was fortunate enough to have the city manager tap me on the shoulder and say, "Would you please be the interim police chief?" And she kind of told me at the time that she intended that to be a few months. It turned out to be 9 months. And I was fortunate enough through the process, which was very arduous. It was, as is typical now for police chief jobs, it was a nationwide search. The city paid a consulting group to do a big search and had to go through it. I think by the end we had 16 or 17 different interviews in that process. But thankfully, the 9 months as interim, it felt like I was running for office. I've told friends that are in politics, I have new respect for them because I really had to get out and just not necessarily knock doors, but I had to be in every corner of Boulder to let people know me. There were some things because I came from Aurora PD. There were some things that I was painted with a very broad brush of I'm from Aurora PD, I must be corrupt, and there's a lot of false narratives out there that I kind of had to counter.
Why is that? Why
Well,
did, coming from Aurora, why did that bring a baggage with it?
Yeah, so Aurora had a rough few years. The last few years I was there, and I will say, number one, Aurora is a great police department. Were there some issues? Absolutely. There were some things we had to work through, and there was probably some things that came to light based on some of the national conversation that we probably should have addressed earlier on systemically. And for me, quite frankly, I didn't see some of those things. And I'm not talking like blatant misconduct, blatant things that were overlooked. It was more of some of the systemic things in our system in policing. It took me coming to Boulder to see a different way of doing things to realize that, man, there's some things that we did there that probably were actually more harmful than helpful.
Can you give some examples, or maybe even not precise examples, but
yeah, I mean, just some of the historic. And I will preface this as well: is Aurora is a very rough place.
Yeah.
My 4th day of field training in Aurora with a training officer right out of the academy at 21 years old, we responded to an incident, and it turned up into about a 20-minute running gun battle. I mean, from like the first week in Aurora, I was like, wow, this place is much different than I grew up in the suburbs. Very rough place. And so you end up fostering an attitude of a lot of us versus them type mentality. And when I say them, I just mean, the community or the criminals. And it's easy to really think that when you're dealing with some of the worst of the worst, gang violence, homicides. I worked murder cases there. I was one of the first responders at the theater shooting in 2012.
Yeah, and remind the audience about the theater shooting.
Yeah.
What was that incident? I mean, it's still in people's memory.
Yeah.
It's still referred to, but a lot of us, it's a hazy memory now because
sadly
we've
had a lot more mass violence too.
So bring that incident to life and in the context of when it happened.
Yeah.
Because when it happened, it was, it was uniquely tragic.
It was, and at the time, it was the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. A gunman went in, and actually the anniversary will be coming up here in July.
That's the 5-year?
13-year.
Or 13.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy to think that long. But wow. This guy went in, he'd planned this for some time, was just not a well-adjusted human and went into a movie theater. Very close environment. We've all been in them, and with 3 different firearm systems, and shot almost 70 people, killed 12. And at the time, I was one of the first people on scene. And so that was impactful in many ways. I could probably talk a whole hour just about the impact that had on me personally and professionally. But that was just, go ahead.
Was it a mental health situation? What was the situation? Remind us.
So there were some mental health issues, much like we had with the King Soopers shooter here in Boulder, that mass shooting. The defense was to try to get a judge to agree that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. The good thing was, in that case, just like King Soopers, a judge ruled that he was able to go to trial because he obviously had mental issues, but he knew what he was doing is the baseline that the judge had, or the prosecutors had to show. And so it was hard because we never sat down with him, much like King Soopers. We never sat down with him. He never agreed to an interview to tell us why he did what he did. He wrote a lot of things down in a notebook we found later that gave us some insight into his mind, but very not well-adjusted person, really good upbringing by all accounts, grew up in a middle-class family in San Diego, came out here for school at the University of Colorado, and had a couple things happen in his life, one of which was a girlfriend breaking up with him that seemed to kind of be the catalyst for things falling apart. failed out of school. He's in a neuroscience program, really smart kid, and just started building devices and buying guns and went in and shot a bunch of people. So yeah, it was one of those at the time where we were used to a lot of street violence in Aurora and gun violence and gang violence, but that was a different level.
And how old were you at the time?
I was a sergeant. I'm a cop because math isn't my thing, but I was mid-30s, and
can you share a little bit about how that affected you?
Yeah, and it's been interesting because let me back up one step further. When I was 19 years old, I was a 911 dispatcher at Jeffco Sheriff when Columbine happened.
Oh.
And so that was my first exposure to mass violence, and I lived in that area, so it was even more. It hit home even more. But so that was my first. Then Columbine was the first, then Aurora was the second, and Aurora was different in the regard of Columbine. I was a dispatcher, so on the phone. Aurora was different because it was so much violence, and because of the way that he inflicted his shootings, some of the injuries were just horrific, and it could have been any. We all knew it could have been any one of us there at the movies on our day off, sitting there. It was, there was no rhyme or reason. This guy had no personal beef with any of the people in there. He just wanted to kill people, and that was, for me, it was. I didn't have, I was able to work through it. Thankfully, it was the first time though in my career where I really understood, and now as chief, I really impart wellness and taking care of our officers and peer support and mental health and all those things that I kind of used to shrug off as a young officer. I saw what got me the most was seeing how badly it affected a lot of my colleagues, real tough men and women, having to retire medically, having, domestic violence issues off duty and, alcohol use issues that as a direct result of what they saw that night. And that's what stuck with me is that really affected me. Yeah. But more so what it's led me today is, to try to, and sadly in 2021, our officers experienced it here. We've got to take care of our people before, during, and after an incident like that. But it's not just a mass shooting. Our officers just see things day to day that lead to cumulative trauma too. So it's about having those conversations. And I think we're doing a much better job as a profession than we did, sadly, because of all the mass shootings we've had in this country. So,
yep.
So anyway, all of those things that were going on in Aurora,
and you started talking about. We also started to talk about in Aurora, kind of. These are my words, not yours. Mm-hmm. Police techniques that you look back on. Mm-hmm. Once you ended up in Boulder, but you look back on that were considered, appropriate and commonplace in Aurora, and a lot of police departments, I'm sure, not unique to Aurora, that you had to have a different perspective on now. And I started to ask for some examples, then we moved around a little bit.
That's right. So it wasn't necessarily techniques, it was more of mindset. And I remember being a 21-year-old kid in the academy and hearing things from academy instructors like, everyone you want to meet on the street is you have to go with the mindset of they're going to kill you. They want to kill you. Even the old lady at the grocery store, you can't treat, everybody that you encounter, you have to be prepared for them to harm you. And at the time I'm like, okay, that makes sense. And it probably served me well in parts of my career because I, more than one occasion, had somebody pull a gun on me and those things. But what I realized over the years it did is it really fostered an attitude, more of a survival mode attitude that didn't allow for us to think about things like, no, it's okay to actually be a human being and have interactions with people. Not everybody wants to kill you. That kind of mindset, I think, really wears on you. And it's that hypervigilance that really causes cops to have some of the mental issues and physical issues. And so, again, rough environment, but we've got to break that us versus them mentality of like, it's not that clear of a line of we're the good guys, everybody else is bad guys. It's like the majority of the community is supportive of the police. They don't want to harm the cops. And, you never know when you might, some crazy thing could happen where I'm sitting at a light and somebody decides they want to ambush me because I'm in a uniform. We've got to be ready for those things. But 90+% of our encounters are not that, and we can have positive encounters. And I've taken hardcore gangsters to jail over the year that thanked me. We can have those interactions. And so I really worked hard to try to, I guess, kind of put some of that aside. So it's not that constant living like, oh my gosh, everybody wants to harm you. But yeah, systemic things like that really were focusing on survival mode. I remember, being told back in the day, The most important thing is that you go home safe. And that's, I agree with that. My family would agree with that.
Yes.
But now we look at it, the important thing is everybody goes home safe. And if I can have an environment where our officers, the last thing they want to do is use force, which I think is the case in most cases, everybody wins. If I can come out of a situation and use de-escalation and use less lethal tactics and learn how to talk to people and not just roll up and say, I'm the cops, do what I say or else. That's kind of what we've evolved here in Boulder. And I think Aurora and other places have realized that. And so even though George Floyd's killing was horrific, there's been tons around the country. I think we've been able to learn some things through those from listening to the community of like, no, we expect different from our police, and that's okay. And I think we're doing a lot better job now of realizing that we can't go out there with that mindset of it's just completely always us versus them. We need the community to do what we do.
Yep. And lots of evolved in a short period of time too. I mean, at least from my vantage point, it seems like the extraordinary pressure that was being put on police in the 2020 to 2023 timeframe was probably like no other in our history. But it feels like it's moving to a more reasonable place, back to maybe some kind of normalcy.
Whatever that looks like in our profession for normalcy. But I agree with you. We lost around 130 officers in just Boulder PD from 2020 to 2024. We're authorized 191. That is a huge amount of turnover.
Go through the numbers again.
It was around between 2020 and 2024. We had about 130 officers leave.
Yep.
Almost the entire force.
So you almost turned over the entire force in
4 years.
In 4 years. Now some of the same, someone came for a year and left, so it wasn't. So certainly.
But that's a problem. But it's also I also look at it as an opportunity. Really, because we've got a young department right now.
How well staffed are you right now?
We are essentially fully staffed. We're better staffed than we've been since 2016, which is remarkable. Part of it is a credit to the Police Foundation. They were able to support us financially in a huge recruiting campaign that we started in 2022, and we've been able to recruit just stellar candidates that come from all over the country because I think part of it's the reputation we have in Boulder, but it's easy to recruit when we've got what we have in our backyard. We've got about 20 that are in training right now of that 191 that are full strength, but we're actually really, really doing well with recruiting right now.
So when you were going through that 9-month period where you're interim chief but not permanent chief, you were facing some pretty cute headwinds.
Yes.
Tell us what those were. Like, what was the origin of that? I'm sure there's some things you probably don't want to go into on that.
Well, I can't because there's some litigation going on right now.
Oh, is there
some of it? But what I'll say generally, and I alluded to it, is I was somewhat blindsided because, I came here. I had a great career in Aurora. I retired as division chief, and I left there. It was just to come here for greener pastures. I didn't leave there because of anything. Very public. There was nothing. There was some local activist groups here, and one in particular that, because of my association with a high-profile case in Aurora where there was a young man that died in custody, some things got really taken out of context. And next thing I knew, the attack was on, and it really took me a moment to step back and go, wait a second, this is not what that is, and there were absolutely things that should have been done different back then in Aurora, but we're talking 2019. It now came up in 2020 and way out of context, and it was rough. There was quite a bit of a town hall meeting that happened where they served pizza was served to come and hear all the reasons why I shouldn't be the permanent police chief. It was tough, and it really forced me to get out in the community and have tough conversations. And I met anybody who'd listen to say, let me tell you what the real story is. Let me get to know me as a human being, which the people who really came after me didn't do. They didn't know me from Adam, and that's what was tough. I'm like, wait, normally when I get to know somebody, they'll get to know me and realize like I'm a decent human being, and I feel like I usually get along well with everybody, and this was a complete social media behind the keyboard campaign that it was tough. And I honestly, people were like, oh, you got to be a shoo-in for the Chiefs job because you've been the interim. And I feel like as interim, I did a good job. And I'm like, absolutely not. There's nothing that is certain. And so it was a rough year.
Did you almost give up and say, no, not at all?
No, in fact, my dad passed in 2012, actually right around the time of the theater shooting. And so I think often my dad was a businessman. He's just an incredible man. And I think about my dad. I thought about my dad and my grandpa, who was a Marine. My grandpa was one of the cable TV pioneers. I think we talked about it at one point. And both of those guys would have just smacked me if I would have given up like that. That always crossed my mind of like, no, I didn't come this far. Now, if I had, I fully admit if I really screwed up and I'd done something that made me unfit to be the chief, I'd be the first one for the sake of the department to walk away. But that wasn't the case. And I had good support from the city manager, council, others. So no, I would never thought about giving up. There were some rough times and, there was stuff in the paper. There was stuff on the news. Like my mom read some of it and was in tears, and it really, for lack of an eloquent term, pissed me off. But I never thought about giving up. The main reason as well is Boulder PD is such a great police department. Like I by the time that I was interim chief, I'd been here 2 years, and I was not going to let these guys and gals down who, for the most part, have great internal support too. So I never thought about giving up.
So the other thing that was happening a lot in that same time frame, 2020, 2021, 2022, is it was increasingly feeling unsafe, in many parts of the nation, but including here in Boulder. Boulder, you're on your bike and riding on a bike path. If you were taking a hike, if you're walking down Pearl Street, my wife and I were having dinner at the fish place Jack's on Pearl Street, sitting outside. That was when tents were set up, and someone is literally throwing rocks from the other side of the tent and trying to get them to land on our heads, I guess, and where we're eating. And it was extraordinary, but it was happening on a pretty widespread basis. What was that like? First of all, is that how you perceived it, that there was a period where COVID related, there was a lot more difficulty relative to safety and security than it was prior periods? And then we'll get into the improvements that we've seen since. But did it feel that way from a police perspective, or was that our imagination?
So it's definitely not your imagination. I mean, there's two things, and we still deal with this right now. I mean, we had a terrorist attack in June.
Yeah, we'll talk about
we've had some other, we had a guy running around a few weeks ago and hit a bunch of people with a chain, just totally random stuff. So the two things we still deal with today is the actual crime, and we have great data that shows our crime numbers, and we're actually looking really, really good. But then you have the perception and fear of crime, and that is just as important. When people don't feel safe, and part of it is things get legs on next door and other, but that's real. When people don't feel safe, that's a real thing, whether the data shows that but Boulder is a very safe place. Going back though to 2021, and I can only speak from 21 and beyond, when I was here, we were down 40 cops when I got here in September of 21. So we're not able to do the proactive work that we're doing right now. We're not able to have a ton of foot patrols like on Pearl Street or on the Creek Path. It was literally just chasing 911 calls where our cops didn't have time to get out and do proactive work when all we're barely scraping by to handle calls for service. And so that has a direct correlation to people engaging in unlawful or just unsafe behavior when they're not seeing cops. It's a problem. Couple that with some legislative decisions that were made in 2019, decriminalizing drugs to the point where still today we write a ticket to somebody for meth, heroin, fentanyl, cocaine. Some guy shooting up, heroin in the middle of Central Park. We contact him. He's got more heroin. As of today, still he gets a ticket. When that came out, there was not additional money put to drug treatment. So there's a lot of factors that went into that. But no, what you felt then is absolutely true. We had a lot of unsafe behavior going on, and so we've made great strides, but we still have work to do to get. We do really well when there's a violent crime. When Boulder's very few and far between, gun violence, all that. We do really well when it happens. It's the lower level stuff that's repeated that tends to cause the most fear and harm that we struggle with based on some of the systemic issues.
Yeah. So I'm going to go off on a quick tangent here, which I wasn't even going to bring up, but you triggered in my mind.
Uh-oh.
So I hear you're going to solved through DNA, the John Benet Ramsey
Oh,
case.
come on. You had to bring that up. I will say I will give you the same line we give everybody else. It is an open investigation. No, it's no secret that the John Benet case is still, I got a couple emails today from interested individuals around the world. I continue. It is incredibly high profile still, and since the Netflix special last year, got a lot of additional attention. We are still working that case. We're hopeful things will change and we get to a better place. That's all I'll say on that.
But is there some truth to that there might be some DNA sources that can be tested now that wouldn't have been testable in the past?
That's our hope. We are constantly, and we're working a lot with the FBI. We've been in conversations with different private entities. We are hoping that technology, with the rapid changes that's happening, will get us to a point where we can make some progress on things we haven't been able to do before.
Is it important to, if we can, solve that case, or is it
Absolutely.
so long ago that it's not important?
No. It's important, and one of the reasons any homicide never gets closed is because it always stays open. And you look at some of the successes around the country with cold cases. If nothing else, my goal. It has been a long time, and so that makes it very challenging. My goal is to get to a point with that case or any other of our cold cases to say we've gotten to the point where we have no more workable leads.
Yep.
At least that gives the community and the families and the public a kind of okay, here's where that stands. But we're not there yet. We're still working some things.
Yeah.
The FBI was incredibly helpful and came in and helped us digitize millions of pieces of reports. So we've made some good progress. But it's a 1996 case, and the more time that elapses, the tougher that gets.
Is there, with the big acceleration of Gen AI, is Gen AI being used by police departments around the world, or is it a thought that it's going to be set up to be used to crack some of these cases by being able to make sense of all the disparate evidence that is out there?
We're a little behind as a profession when it comes to some of the AI stuff because being government, there's very close regulations. We've got a group in the city through mostly our information tech department that if I want to bring a new product on board that has AI, it has to get approved, go through that. But it changes daily. I mean, I see we have to be careful too because we can't plug a bunch of sensitive things into ChatGPT public. But some of the capabilities that AI has, I'm incredibly hopeful that it's going to help us, really advance the profession. But investigation-wise, I think there's so much potential, and there's a new company that comes online every day that has some new idea with AI. We just have to be super careful about what's legit and what's not because there's also the potential for misuse, and I think that's what the community is concerned about is. They don't want us using it for things that we shouldn't, but I think it's a game changer worldwide on every aspect. But in policing, I think it's gonna be a game changer. We're using a couple different AI products right now. One of them, which helps our officers write their police reports with their body cam footage, essentially transcribing what's said on body cam into a police report, saving 30 minutes on some report calls.
30 minutes probably saves hours. At
least. And it allows our officers to potentially get that break they wouldn't have gotten, but really to get out there and be more proactive in the community and not sitting behind a desk typing a report. We're using an AI product right now in our dispatch center. It's a quality assurance tool where we used to have a human being have to review them, so it takes a certain number of 911 calls. We plug in what we expect, and the AI tool reviews those and provides feedback to the call taker, like, here's some ways you could have maybe done differently on those. So things like that, game changer, especially when we're worried about overtime and things.
Oh, well, and as you said, overtime or not, taking our professionals and have them doing the job that they're trained to do, not writing reports. And they still have to be responsible for the outcome of those reports. But boy, if the reports can be drafted based on real data, be drafted, and then the officer reviews them, not only do they save hours and hours, but it can't be the kind of work that people sign up to do when they want to be.
No. And you look at a busy shift, like on, let's say the evening shift, officer gets off at midnight. On a busy shift where you're going to a bunch of emergencies, you may come back to the station at your end of shift and have 3 or 4 reports that you have to sit there and type. Ugh. You're here till 3 a.m. on overtime, which is fine. We'll pay the overtime, but that's time your kid may have an early game the next day. You're either going to be tired or missing out on things. And so the less time we can have officers behind that keyboard, those are things
Plus
I
the
think is a game changer.
That's the human ear factor when it's,
Right.
when you're tired and it's,
Yep.
you had a long shift and it's the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I mean, how easy it is to get something
Yep.
not right.
Yeah, it's really cool. There's so much potential. I think we're gonna see all kinds of crazy things.
Yep. So back to that 2001,
Mm-hmm.
2003 period, maybe if you can explain in Boulder, which is similar to some other cities, municipalities, but different than others. How does your accountability work? Like who are you responsible to? Under what direction do you operate? What is your chain of command? I guess.
Yeah, good question. I think each city's a little bit different. In Boulder, obviously, the community elects our city council. Our city council, they choose the city manager, who I report to. They choose the city attorney and the municipal judge. Those are the three entities that report directly to council. So I
So
report
it's the city manager.
the city attorney and the municipal judge.
Okay.
I report to Nuria Rivera-Vandermeid, our city manager. She and I have a great relationship. She's been in Austin and Minnesota in city government, Minneapolis and Austin. So she's been in some bigger places. She's very savvy politically and I've learned a lot from her of navigating politics and especially in Boulder. But ultimately, so I report to her, she reports to council. So if council's hearing from the community that they're not happy about something the police department's doing, it's going to come to her and then I'm going to hear about it. And so we have a very open line of communication. So that's my boss. And then we've got the police oversight panel and we've also got an independent police monitor. So we've got a couple extra layers that most
What are
places
those
don't
two
have.
layers? What are their responsibilities?
Yeah, so the police oversight panel is a group of community that are chosen to. There's a big push when choosing members of that panel to have people with lived experience and different diverse backgrounds. I find it helpful because I am still the final decision maker when it comes to discipline. So a complaint comes in, you call and say, hey, this officer pulled me over and he was rude, or worse, even worse down the road, this officer used excessive force. That comes in as a complaint. We have an independent police monitor.
What does that mean?
So she came from Chicago PD. She worked in police oversight there. As the independent police monitor, she classifies any complaint that comes in. So she says this appears to be violations of this. We have an extreme amount of policies and procedures. And then it goes, it gets investigated by internal affairs. The police oversight panel has the option of reviewing any complaint of misconduct. They don't go around and do interviews or anything, but when the complaint is done, they can review it. And then they provide feedback to me, which is helpful. So I get the feedback throughout the chain of command. Whoever's accused of misconduct, I get the sergeant commander, deputy chief's recommendations. I get the police oversight panel recommendation, which coming from a community's perspective is helpful. And then I get to make the final decision and discipline. And so that's kind of the structure we have, which is we're one of the only cities around that has those extra layers.
So I'm going to say a few things. You don't have to agree or disagree. Your positioning of this is laudable. You have to operate in this environment, but I could not imagine being in charge of a police force and having all these levels of people looking over the shoulder who may or may not be balanced in their point of view, may or may not be accountable to really the community in the way you would think on paper they are. The opportunity for second guessing, you and your entire police force has got to be overwhelming. Congratulate for being able to operate in that environment, but
Thanks.
Boy, that's got to be just a very tricky. I think that's about as friendly a way I could put it. A very tricky environment in which to operate.
I will just to that. What I will say, it's the mindset of looking at it as a positive thing. And what I'll say, and I'll say this publicly anywhere, I've been here 4 years and this department does not have a culture of misconduct, a culture of excessive force, culture of racism. Like it is not, as the new guy here from the outside, I looked in every corner of this department. I reviewed as deputy chief every use of force. Our department doesn't have systemic issues like bigger cities may have. So for me, I'm not worried about it. Like here, look at it. Look at what we do. if you want to, as a community, provide some feedback of like, hey, we think the officer next time in this scenario, maybe think about doing this. And it's not something I've thought of because I look at things from a cop's lens. I look at that as helpful. We've made great progress with our panel. They initially they didn't do ride-alongs. They've all come out and done ride-alongs now. They've come into the police department and we've done use of force training for them. And so things have gotten really to a better place with it. I don't look at it as a bad thing. And if it lets the community, if it gives the community a little more reassurance that there's some entity in there making sure we don't turn into a department with a negative culture, I'm good with it. Although sometimes I feel like I have to navigate the effect it has on our cops as a recruiting and retention issue as well, because sometimes it is difficult.
Yeah, and obviously none of us want an environment where, our public safety officers are misbehaving in any way.
Right.
So none of us are looking for that. I commend you for painting a real positive picture of this. Where I put a bit of a skepticist hat on is and I don't think you do this, but so I'm not implying that in any way, shape, or form. But as a person in the community, what I worry about is the easiest way to deal with a situation like that is for a police force to just say, take a step back. Okay, we won't get involved in situations if we feel like there's any exposure to us.
Yeah.
Which means maybe there's a higher level risk placed on kind of the people in the community because the police are a bit constrained.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing the job they're hired to do, and that is to keep our community safe and secure.
I hear you. Thankfully, I haven't seen that here, but I won't. Let me back up. I think that happened nationwide after 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw it, and it's one of the reasons that crime skyrocketed in a lot of the big cities because the number one, we lost a lot of cops, but a lot of cops, especially the ones that were doing the right thing for the right reasons, are like, man, I don't want to be on the front page, or family members were like, hey, go to work and do the bare minimum. We don't want you to be the next headline on the news.
It's not just headline news. It's you're
Right.
getting sued, losing your entire net worth,
100%.
losing your home, maybe ending up in jail. And if you did something really wrong, it is what it is. But if a circumstance just took a tangent or two, which when you're dealing with your line of work, that's going to happen. That's for certain going to happen.
Yep.
The best way to avoid it is say, I'm just going to,
It is a constant conversation that I have with our staff about reminding them that I still have final say on discipline. And the good thing is I can think of in the 4 years I've been here really mostly on one hand where we've actually had serious issues.
That's fantastic.
And most of those were probably people who had character flaws before they even became a cop, and we got rid of them. And that's the culture. So our guys and gals know where they work. They know the high expectations of the community. And I do my best and try to get our executive team and management to do our best to let us worry about that stuff. You guys go out and do the job that you're paid to do.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a constant thing to have to navigate, but I'm good with it. That's the will of the voters created the panel, and we'll deal with it. And it's if we can turn it into something that's positive, I'm committed to doing that.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for that, because it'd be easy to to extract yourself from that environment or to have trouble operating with that environment, even if you had the right intention.
Yeah,
that's not an easy environment to operate in, and most people who are maybe quite capable of being, a police chief, might have trouble operating in this type of environment. I certainly would.
I'm good with it. I meet with them every quarter. We've had some tough conversations, but I think we're in a good place.
All right, so we just took a short break, and now we're back, and it's no longer the police chief.
Yeah, well, for the day.
For the day. You're a police chief for the day. Is that what the program is?
Yeah, so I'm riding along with Chief Redfearn today, just getting to learn how the sausage is made and seeing what he does in the department.
Great. Well, introduce yourself to us and tell us how you end up being an officer here in Boulder.
Yeah.
And what it is that led you to be to choose police as your line of work. Let's know who you are.
Definitely. So my name is Lucas Santos. I am born and raised in Brazil. Moved here about 2004 with the family to Pittsburgh. And me and the wife moved over here in 2021. And wanted to be a police officer just to help out in the community, give back. Saw that there was a hole throughout the whole country, and a lot of people needed more police officers and just people that really want to do good in this world. So,
And were you? Did you start somewhere other than Boulder as a?
no, sir, no. Whenever I moved over here, I decided that was the right time to make the jump, close to turning 30, and so
Oh, you're old.
I know, right? Ancient. But no, just thought it was the right time to do it, and just saw the need for it within the community and for myself as well.
But how'd you
And
end up in
so,
Boulder?
we came out here. We went to Montana for 5 weeks. Loved it over there. We thought it was beautiful, but then we wanted to be somewhere where there was more people. Thought it was a little bit too remote in some of the areas we were looking there, and so Denver was kind of the place for us. So, yeah.
So tell us about Boulder and what as you've gotten to know Boulder and you're part of the community now. What would you describe Boulder to be like from the perspective of someone who is new to Boulder
Sure.
and grew up outside of the U.S.? How
Definitely.
does the Boulder community feel to you?
It's kind of like the definition of the American dream here in Boulder, right? You have such a mixed pot of different cultures, people. I mean, you got the CU students, you got a large amount of people with wealth, some people with not, but still, it's like a great community, and you get the whole mix and the whole perspective of what that American dream really is all about. So, love coming into work every day. Every interaction is different, and you never know who you're going to come across.
And do you feel welcomed in the community?
Oh yeah, most definitely, most definitely. I know they have the School of Samba here in Boulder, and being from Brazil, kind of fit right in. So whenever I went to
Oh, I
that,
didn't know the connection between that and Brazil.
yeah. So there's that. There's a couple of spots downtown here that they sell some coxinha, which is like just some Brazilian cuisine. So kind of gets me a little bit of feeling of back home, just
Oh, nice.
with the cuisine. So yeah, it's nice.
And then as the last question, tell us about what it's like to be on the Boulder Police Force and what the culture is like there, what your colleagues are like, what's being part of the police force all about to you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I love being in the Boulder Police Department. Being here, everyone is, very optimistic. We have a great department, great people to work with, always striving to learn more, go out and do good, really good in the community. I know one of the things that Chief kind of touched on is being out there, being proactive, and being a presence within the community. You really feel the difference whenever you're out there working your beat and you get to step out of the patrol car, go grab a cup of coffee, and you meet somebody and they come up to you, thank you for your service. It just makes you feel like you're really doing a difference. And then also just being out there helping the community for, some of the times that they're at their worst. So it just really makes it where you can lift the spirits and see the good in that transition.
Well, Lucas, thanks for stepping in here and giving us a little bit of your perspective. And
Most definitely. Thank you
we'll
for having
switch
me.
back to Chief Redfearn, and this is a lot of fun. Pleasant surprise having you in here and participating.
Most definitely. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So what is the state of Boulder right now relative to, well, before we go to the state of Boulder, let's talk head on about the recent incident on Pearl Street Mall. And that's it's safe to say that could have happened, in a lot of different places.
Agreed.
It happened to happen here in Boulder. It happened in our Pearl Street Mall, which is something we all
Yep.
put a lot of value on. Tell us about the incident. How did it unfold?
Yeah.
What did it mean for you to put you in the spotlight for certain? So take us through that.
Yes, it did. Things got a little weird after the attack. So pretty normal Sunday afternoon. I'm at home. I'm actually getting ready to go to an event in Boulder for Rocky Mountain Equality that they have every year. And as I'm getting ready, I just got dressed and getting ready to go. After doing a bunch of yard work that morning, my phone goes off, and it's a group that we use to communicate within our executive team, and it's our dispatch supervisor. And he says, mass casualty incident at the courthouse on Pearl Street with Molotov cocktails. And I'm like, so I don't get shocked at all when I hear any kind of active shooter thing, because sadly that's what we're used to. But it took me a second, and my initial response, which not much surprises me anymore after almost 25 years in this job, initially my response was, okay, why are we doing a training exercise on a Sunday? And if you're going to do it, because we do a lot of that, you need to give us a heads up first. And then something seemed weird, so I turned on my phone. I can access our police radio channels, and I turned it on, and instantly I was like, "Oh God, this is legit."
This is real.
Jumped in the car, got here as quick as possible. I was one of the first supervisors on scene, absent the patrol sergeant was working. Our officers that got there did an incredible job. One of them's here with me today. First responders to that, to really stabilize it. People, hindsight's 2020. The Monday morning quarterbacking stop. Why didn't you shoot the guy? Like, they did exactly as they were trained. The guy instantly complied. He was put in handcuffs, and then they went to work to worry about the victims. And what was, I think, tough on a lot.
Why would someone have thought the right first response was to?
We often get put in that catch-22 where, people were like, well, they should have shot him. He was using Molotov cocktails, and I'm sure they absolutely would have if he was actively tossing them. But they got there, they put him at gunpoint, he laid on the ground as instructed, and they put him in cuffs exactly as they're trained to do. And then, as you know, if we would have used lethal force, we would have got criticized by some for that. But the cops did everything right, and it's on body cam. At some point, there's going to be a bunch of trials that'll come out at some point.
Right.
But
I didn't hear anyone question what the response of the Boulder police was.
Oh, I got emails from all over the country, and I made the mistake a couple times of looking at some social media. Of course, I know better, but no, the guys and gals just did amazing work. I think it was different, and I got there quick enough where I got to see a lot of the immediate aftermath. And even though we know how to respond now to mass violence events, we train all the time. The reasoning behind this, the alleged motivation, the hatred for a particular group, and then the method of like literally lighting people on fire was that I think took all of us take a little step back and just shake our heads and go, what the heck is wrong with people? But as we do, we focused on the investigation. We worked to get it to a good place, and I'm really happy with the investigation. What really was tough on us was the finding out 3 weeks later that one of the victims, we got a heads up that she was not going to make it, and then she ultimately passed away, which I'd actually held my head pretty high on for a while, of looking like, hey, this was traumatic. This is awful. This happened in Boulder on our watch, but nobody died. So, that was one thing. And then when we heard that, it was just awful. However, a lesson for me and a lesson I've shared with other police chiefs I know is I put a bunch of time and effort into meeting with our Jewish community beforehand, just in general, with everything that's going on. I've also done it with our Muslim community. And so when the attack happened, it wasn't, hey, I'm the police chief, nice to meet you. It was first name basis, text, phone calls, hugs, crying with our Jewish community, stakeholders. And so that was really important to me.
In fact, the fundraiser, the gala last time, I assume this time too, is at
the Jewish Community Center.
Community Center. So
incredible partners. And so that was, seeing them, grieving was tough, because it's not, we're not a huge city where it's just, you don't know names and faces. So it hit close to home. I think a lot of us, a lot of the cops were like, man, we always do it. But the what ifs, what if I would have taken a right instead of a left? Why couldn't I have been walking by? I mean, the night before I was on Pearl Street, walked right by there with my family, we went to dinner. And I remember even thinking it was a beautiful summer night. I'm like, I'm going to have a cocktail or two at dinner. I'm not even going to carry my firearm tonight. Boulder's so safe. And it is. But then the next day we have that attack, and it just kind of was like, man, when me as the police chief, it kind of shatters my sense of safety in the community. We know the effect it has on everybody else, and it makes me mad.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for you to correct me if you think I'm thinking about this in maybe an unfair way. So one thing that has long bothered a lot of us in the community is when we go, I'll use going down Pearl Street, but I could easily say down Boulder Creek, I could say on our back pass, you see a lot of examples where there are people who are struggling, often presumably with either mental health issues or with drug addiction, and behaving erratically.
Yep.
So they're behaving erratically. They're in an encampment-like environment, or maybe they're just taking over a certain area and they're behaving erratically.
Right.
And I think the guidance that you and your department have been given by the powers to be in Boulder is, unless you see them doing something criminal, explicitly, you kind of tolerate that. You kind of let that just persist, at least in a lot of cases. Then you see an incident like that happen, and you're like, well, we kind of seen a lot of people in that very area who act very erratic. We can all look and say, okay, that makes me concerned I'm going to walk on the other side of Pearl Street Mall I'm going to look and say, I can't believe we tolerate this. Sooner or later, something's going to go wrong with a person like that because obviously they're struggling.
Right.
Yet, we all kind of look the other way because that's what we're instructed to do. And it makes us feel less safe, less secure, not unlike the guy who threw kind of the rock over the tent trying to hit, the group of people, not anyone in particular, but a group of people hitting there. And then you see an incident like this happen, you say, was there some correlation between the fact that, maybe we didn't know that person was going to act that violently for whatever reason they chose to act, but we could have also observed that we're leaving a lot of risk in the environment with tolerating people who obviously are behaving in ways that at least cause others to say, man, this something could go wrong here really quick.
Yeah.
And then it happens.
Yep.
How does that resonate with you? How do you process that?
So I do want to correct you on the point of there at no time have we ever been told, hey, be hands off. In fact, one of the reasons we've made good progress recently is because the city manager, city attorney, and others have really said, hey, we really want you to go and conduct more enforcement. We've always had laws against camping and no tents. There's still a lawsuit and an appeal going on a group that's suing us over the camping ban, the city, not the police department. What has been challenging and what still remains to be challenging, and it's by no means a directive to me from any of my boss or counsel or anybody, is the limitations our officers have just under the law. So we have a tent ban, and we write a lot of tickets for people that are using, putting up tents. We had some really bad incidents earlier this year where large encampments popped up down in the central corridor. And what ended up happening was we were writing tickets, and then we have an entire team that just does camp cleanups. It's run through our safe and managed public spaces. I have 3 officers assigned to that. They go out and do the cleanups. They have to post legally. They post for 72 hours. And then 3 days later, they come and clean up the camp. If they're gone, they take their stuff, put it in, if it's valuable, put it in storage. A lot of stuff is trash, goes away. What was happening is we would clean up a camp here, and they would then just move half a mile up the creek and put up a camp there. And then it would start all over. And so now the tack that we're taking citywide is not only can you not camp here, you cannot camp anywhere along the creek path corridor, downtown, the main corridor. We are being much more forceful with that. We're using, with the city attorney's office now, we're using area restrictions where if someone continues to violate ordinance, they're actually being told by a judge as part of their plea, you're going to plead to this, but you cannot be in this area for this amount of time. So those are all things we're doing now that have led to, I've been hearing a lot of feedback of things look really good.
Yeah. Okay. Really good or incrementally better?
I think, when I look downtown compared to how it was when I got here in 21, really good.
Yeah. And I agree. But a lot of us would say being better than we were back then is not the bar that we should be setting for ourselves. And to me, and a lot of people think this way. And I think we have to appreciate it. It's not, and I'm not saying you and your police department operate this, but I do think Boulder, some of the people in mindset you work from Boulder, they're more on the spectrum of thinking that we're being compassionate by being more tolerant of, encampments, more tolerant of the behavior associated with, people who, are homeless, not necessarily because of mental health, but because it's a lifestyle that they're comfortable to be in an area like Boulder and other areas of the country. And a lot of us think we're being the opposite of compassionate by tolerating that. We're enabling them to live a very difficult lifestyle with a dependency on drugs and kind of almost like a micro community acceptance of
100%.
that. And we don't think we're helping them, and we certainly don't think we're serving the community who we think deserves to feel a safety, a security, a pride, and bringing colleagues and bringing family, bringing friends to the heart of Boulder, and not be concerned about their safety, their security, or the messiness that you'll see as a
100%.
result of those situations.
Yeah, and I absolutely, I have said this time and time again, and I'll give you a couple more things, talking points on where I wanted to go with that. In my personal opinion, it is not more compassionate to leave somebody out on the street to freeze to death. We have had this year alone quite a few deaths outside
Really?
of homeless people, unhoused people that either overdose and die outside and nobody sees it because they're not in a populated environment, freeze to death. It's awful. But there is still a push, and it's part of a lawsuit of a camp that wants us to leave everybody alone to their own accord. And to me, in a place that is a very compassionate overall, I think Boulder is, we have a severe lack of services for people. Our officers repeatedly, someone gets banned from the shelter, and of course the shelter has to have rules, and I agree, and it's fairly easy to get banned. There's nowhere else our officers can take people. And I was told when I first got here, sometimes we just need to wait till people commit a felony or die. And that blew my mind for a compassionate place. And that happens. And when someone commits a felony, there's a victim associated with that. And I do not think it's more compassionate to eventually, left to their own accord, they will die. Number two, a lot of the violent crime we see is unhoused on unhoused. So the victim offender overlap is huge. The big thing, and I was going to go there, the big issues we currently have, there's PR bond legislation at a state level that requires anyone that goes to jail for a municipal offense, they have to get let out in 48 hours. That is not enough time for somebody to get sober. And there's also, for us currently, and
You said the reason for that is
there's state legislation that says that if there's a municipal offense, so take the tent ban, that doesn't have a corollary state offense in the offense books. If a person says, I want to get out of jail, they have to be let out on a PR bond within 48 hours. That is a struggle.
And what's a PR?
A personal recognizance bond, which basically means they sign a piece of paper.
When did that legislation get put in effect?
A couple of years ago. And then in addition...
but which is important because...
It is important.
It's, those are our elected officials. They put that in place only a couple of years ago. And if that's one of the factors... It has a
direct relation to what we're seeing on the street.
Wake up, people who are listening to this who have similar points of view that I'm expressing, step up and be part of of the process where we elect people to represent us who don't do things like that.
Yeah, and then the second issue we have, and the sheriff is a good friend of mine. I don't envy some of the challenges he has, but our jail, the voters a few years back did not approve an initiative for a bigger jail. The jail has capacity issues, and so we have limited things we can take people to jail for. And what you end up, and again, I am the first one to agree that if someone has a severe substance use disorder, jail isn't going to be the answer long term. But we need a mechanism a lot of times to disrupt that problematic behavior. And what we've had is a lot of carrot and not a lot of stick. And there's got to be a better balance.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that we don't have the services.
Correct.
It's important to recognize that Boulder has the money for the services. There's more money that flows through. I think this is accurate. I'm sure I'll get corrected if it's not. But relative to a city of size, our budget, the amount of money we have to work with, is high, not medium or low. But we're prioritizing other things over that.
Well, but I'll push back on that a little bit because I don't think it's a local issue as much as it is a state and even county issue too, because Colorado is a state, again, pretty progressive place. We're one of the least, when you look at the ranking of states on mental health services, we're always almost dead last within the bottom 3 to 5 in the United States. States that you wouldn't think would have better mental health care for people are way above Colorado. The state hospital in Pueblo is the single place. We have 30 to 50, sometimes 60 people in the county jail taking up a cell, waiting to go to Pueblo to get evaluated. Most of the time they have to be by themselves because they have mental health issues. They can't be housed together, and those lead to the issues. In a perfect world, every county would have a mental health facility where our officers could say, and the ability to go, you've demonstrated that you can't be left out on the street. I'm going to take you. Or a judge have the ability to say, I'm going to mandate treatment, drug treatment, mental health treatment, or both. We don't have that, and that is what again is problematic.
Why do you think we don't have those?
I don't know. I don't know the reasons behind it. I know that with the King Soopers case, it became a glaring example where our suspect sat in Pueblo at the state mental hospital for months and months and months. There was a huge period of time in there wasn't even a doctor at the facility because something had happened. And this guy's playing cornhole and singing karaoke at the state mental health hospital after he's killed a bunch of people, waiting to get a mental health evaluation, and he's not going to group therapy as mandated. You know, those kind of things happening where I don't know the answer, other than I will also say that it's well documented that the state finds itself millions of dollars a year or a month because the state hospital isn't meeting what it's supposed to. So some changes need to happen there. I know that there's legislation that's maybe in the works, but to me, again, if we had more ability to interrupt people's behavior and get them clean and sober, and when we arrest somebody, have services to meet them at the back door of the jail when they're released. Somebody does 90 days in jail, they should be sober. Literally meet them there with service providers and go, yeah, we're not going to let you go back down to Central Park where you like to score your drugs. We're going to take you to somewhere that's going to help you transition back into the community. Like, those are what's going to solve the long-term problems. And we just don't have a lot of that.
Yeah. And we don't have a lot of that, and we're not working hard to get it either. So what I don't see and hear is, is the people who represent, us in the community, prioritizing that as high as it needs to be.
There is a lot of work.
Part of it is, and it's easy to say, well, we just need to tax more, and maybe part of the solution is to tax more. But it starts with, what are we spending money on now that is a lower part in that? Stop spending money on those things until you make sure, what we're doing for those in our community who are in need, because a lot of those people are in need.
Absolutely.
If you believe in letting them live in encampments, you should definitely believe in us funding the services to help them, get to a better life.
But I think no matter where anybody is on the political spectrum, we can all agree that having somebody living outside, and this isn't somebody that wants to. Some people choose, but a lot of what we see, the problematic behavior, is people that aren't able to make clear choices. The methamphetamine on our street right now is so strong; it's literally altering people's brains. Like, people are not able, in a lot of cases, to make coherent decisions. I think we can all agree that it's not acceptable to leave somebody out where they're probably going to die. Like, that's not okay. Yeah. So we got to do better.
At a minimum, they're going to live you want to let people live the life they choose to live.
But they're being victimized too.
But you think we could figure out ways to help them through those periods as opposed to just.
There's some progress on some fronts. I mean, there's very well-intentioned people working on a lot of things. To me, it needs to be just a much larger scale effort, and it needs to start. I think local, state, federal, county, everybody needs to be pitching in to make this happen, or we're going to continue to.
What do you think? This may be. Hey, I'm worried about protecting the streets. This is on other people's to-do list. But what big ideas do you think about that could get us, as a nation, in a better spot with, say, drug addiction?
Yeah. So
and drug deaths. I mean, the deaths have been taking place.
I think we had almost 40 deaths of overdose last year in the city of Boulder. It's a lot. It's way too many. One's too many. A lot of those were unhoused. A lot of those were people outside in the public corridor. Personally, in 2019 in Colorado, when we deregulated a lot of the drugs that you now get a ticket for on felony drugs, when I tell friends from other states that are cops or chiefs, they're like, "Oh my God, that's crazy," because we have people tell us all the time, "Yeah, I'm addicted to this kind of drug. I used to go try to use it out of sight. Now, I mean, why wouldn't I just sit here in the middle of the park and use it? Because I know I'm just going to get a ticket. We've got to do something different."
And what happens when they get a ticket? Do they pay the ticket?
A lot of the time, they'll fail to appear. They'll end up getting a warrant, and the whole system starts. And a big issue we still deal with is PR bonds, personal recognizance bonds for serious crimes as well. And we have judges that we've had a few incidents this year alone where somebody does a serious crime, they go to court, and a judge will let them out on a PR bond. They're not going to, most of the time, come back to court. So I think we need to really, I understand some of the intent behind PR bond reform, but I think we need to really look at that to see if that's what we as a society want. I think we have to have much better treatment. And we talked about mental health, but drug treatment as well. Even 30 days, somebody going to a facility for 30 days is not going to fix a long-term addiction, drugs, alcohol. I mean, every single one of us knows somebody that struggled with addiction. We've got to have better services, and it shouldn't be, oh yeah, you have insurance, you're going to be good to go. It should be for the betterment of society. We need to be having different conversations about where we're allocating funds, and so I'm a big believer if there's ways we can get people clean, we can treat mental health without having to arrest them. But great, like our officers should be spending their time out there chasing down the burglars and the robbers and the rapists and the car thieves. They spend a heavy percentage of their time dealing with some of the same small number of people over and over and over again. So if we can come up with better ways to do that, I don't know. I don't know what all those reasons are, but it's going to take money. It's going to take governments allocating funding for some of this stuff. And I think you got to try new and different things. And we're always looking at what other states are doing. I know New York was looking at for a while the ability to have a judge be able to say, I'm mandating you to drug treatment. I'm mandating you to mental health treatment. Things like, and I get it. Like, I understand that there are concerns about civil liberties, but again, the end goal, are we comfortable with somebody living outside and all the things that are likely to happen to them, or, the untreated mental illness causing people to be harmed. We got to figure it out. And I don't know all the answers. The good thing is there's a lot of people willing to have the discussion, and we're having a lot of those discussions right now. But government doesn't work quickly. So,
no. Especially when it doesn't work quickly if everyone's trying to accomplish the same thing, but
right.
we're not even at the mode where there's a consensus of
Right.
what we should be trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
Is your understanding or perception that serious crime is down on call it on a nationwide basis, down now relative to the recent past? Like, for example, I was with Mayor Mike Johnson in Denver at kind of a small group session, and he was talking about how their numbers improved dramatically, and it was all seemed to be in the last 4 or 5 months. And he was citing kind of specific data, and it's like, wow, it must be something he's doing. And then I seem to start hearing that in the context of a lot of other geographies. Is there something going on where serious crime is dropping? And if so, what? At first I thought it was something Mike was doing in Denver that, then it seemed to be, no, there's something else maybe going on.
Yeah, we're seeing violent crime around the country. I'm in all kinds of different meetings, get to go to some national think tank stuff quite frequently. I'm doing one next week where we all get together and talk, chiefs and sheriffs, we all talk, and everybody, for the most part, is experiencing drops in violent crime. One of the reasons I attribute to that is police staffing is better. And nothing replaces a patrol officer out on the beat, walking around, driving around, out on a bike. Nothing beats that. I mean, we have great technology, but we've got to, when our departments are getting back to better staffing levels, it's not rocket science. When we're at full staffing, I can put more people out on proactive teams to interrupt crime. And right now, that's some of our best options. We don't have the arrest recourses we used to have. Prevention is huge. And a lot of departments now that are back to better staffing, prevention, we're using technology left and right.
Why is there better staffing across the board?
So we've all been back to, for the most part, there's still departments that are down. I know Denver's down, Aurora. Everybody's working though. And a lot of departments are much better staffed than they were. They're recovering from 2020. People are being drawn back into public service that want to make a difference. And, we've been very intentional, every department, hiring bonuses, all these gimmicks to get people in the door. And it's working in a lot of places. We're not compromising standards. At least we're not.
But how do we go from everyone wanting to get out in 2021 or whatever that peak period is? Because it's only a handful of years ago.
It is a handful of years, but I think there's still a core group of people out there that are drawn to service. And it's about, I think, also letting, time go by. And not to get in specifics of George Floyd or other things that have happened, but there was a big push from family members of law enforcement for them to get out. I think what we've seen and what time has shown us is that if we're doing the right thing for the right reasons, we're going to be fine. And that there was just such a big, everyone was so scared after George Floyd. I mean, every cop I knew watched what happened to George Floyd and condemned it and said it was awful and it was murder, shouldn't have happened. And then the fear turned to like you alluded to earlier, like, man, what if I'm in that 1 in a million scenario? And I'm not saying this was George Floyd because there were major issues there. But what if I'm in that scenario where I do everything right and the outcome is bad, and I'm the next person, on CNN and headline news? I think time has shown that if departments get ahead of that and train properly, that you can still accomplish a lot as a cop and make the community better. And I think that's just been a thing with time of, like, we've seen, okay, this happened. 2020 was an absolute turning point. And now we've seen 5 years later, policing actually still is really good, and it's a noble job. And so I think part of it is us telling our own story too. And we've got every good department that's hiring well has really good comms people that is sharing the story in the video. The second thing is technology. You cannot drive into Boulder today, for the most part, in a stolen car and not hit one of our license plate readers. We are using technology to catch bad guys, and there's still, there's always the critics, and we're having to answer to that, but we're using drones. We have drones out there on patrol. We are using technology to catch bad guys.
How do you use drones in Boulder?
Yeah,
What's
so
the role of drones?
We have over.
Oh, and I have to ask you about the canine program
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
It's near and dear to Cindy's heart.
Yeah.
She helped really get that
Absolutely
funded.
No, so drones. I don't know. I mean, most every police department I know right now is using drones. Drones can get to a scene much faster. I can tell you an incident the other day. We had a guy that had been on a kind of a crime spree. We get a call that he might be in this area. We have over a dozen drones. Officers have them in their car. They can pull over, get the drone up, and now we're testing out using drone as a first responder, where we have 2 dedicated officers to a drone unit. It's not a formal unit. We're kind of piloting it right now, where they're at work, ready to go, ready to launch that drone. The case the other day, it turned out to be the suspect. They fly the drone into a parking garage. The team is down on the ground assembling to make a contact team with the shield and be safe and less lethal. And they fly that drone in, and they're like, yep, he's got a knife in his hand, guys. I mean, those sorts of things, they can step back and prepare better for that, as opposed to they go walking up there all of a sudden, oh crap, he's got a knife, and we end up with a lethal encounter. Things like we get dispatched where there's a guy with a gun. Big deal. Obviously, we're going to be concerned. Drone gets there, zooms in with the technology, goes, that's a lighter, you guys, it's not a gun. I mean, those sorts of things are game changers. But to fight crime, it's amazing.
It's giving you a set of safe eyes.
Yep. So I 100% think that some of the reduction we're seeing in crime is a direct result of technology. A lot of the bigger cities have real-time crime centers where, and we're going to be working to advance our technology here for Sundance and get more infrastructure for that. But license plate readers, cameras, and they've got a person an analyst monitoring these 24/7 in a lot of the big cities to tell the cops, your guy is standing on this corner. And man, like, the technology that we're using to make arrests is a direct result of why crime is down.
Good. And we talked about AI earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be another opportunity to relieve the cops of administrative work,
Right.
hopefully, and allow them to be out. So talk a little bit more about the presence of police in the community and how that is a proactive way of making things more safe, more secure.
So it's an interesting thing. And, we've got most good departments now have data people. And like, I have a senior data analyst. He's a doctor, works in my office. We have smart people looking at data. The one thing you can never quantify is the effect of a patrol officer driving down the street. And you think about it, we know when we do some heroic things and these guys run in and, take a bad guy out, arrest him, whatever, we'd never know just by driving down the street in a marked car what we prevented. You don't know the guy who was just about to break into a house and go, oh crap, there's a cop car. I'm not going to do that today, or at least here. That's always hard to quantify, but nothing beats a patrol officer out pounding the bricks. It's great to get out and interact with the community. It makes community feel safe. But I want anybody that comes to Boulder that wants to commit crime to be like, I'm not going to do that here. There's everywhere I look, there's a cop. That's my vision. And we have to counter and fully understand that there's people that don't want to see cops around and have had bad experiences. And so we got to deal with that and be sensitive to that. But having officers out and it's why we hire the people we do here in Boulder, the right attitude, a positive customer service. It seems weird, but customer service type attitude. It's the analogy that I've heard people use is you want the sheepdog, you want the golden retriever most of the time. The German Shepherd's got to be back there ready to come out when in those small, fractions when that's what we need. We need we train heavily on all the firearms, arrest control, all those things. But the majority of what we do is get out and interact with people. And it sounds cheesy and cliche, but I agree with it. Every contact we make is an opportunity to change people's hearts and minds about cops and what we do. But it's also you listen and you have a good interaction with this guy over here today, and then crime happens the next day and you already know that person. It helps solve crime, those things. So all the technology in the world is great, but nothing beats traditional police work of getting out and interacting with the community. And it's good for our officers that came on in 21 and 22. We weren't doing a lot of traffic stops. We weren't contacting a lot of bad guys. You get out and you learn how to talk to people, and that will pay dividends and help us solve crime.
And I think the mirror image of that is what the community should do for the people who serve us. And that is to reach out to them, to be friendly to them, to thank them, to make sure that you really do appreciate you as the people watching this, the people in my community and in the Boulder community in general, who do appreciate, do benefit from the fine work you guys are doing, to make sure they're expressing that to you guys.
I say that all the time. All the time. People ask me, "What can we do to support the cops?" I said, "You can do small things like, hey, officer, thanks for being here today. Thank you for your service. Buy him a cup of coffee." I was at King Soopers in Denver not long ago shopping, and there was a Denver police officer working. They hire off-duty officers. She was standing near the Starbucks. I went and and she didn't know who I was. I got her a Starbucks gift card and said, "Here you go. Thanks for your service." And those sorts, she was taken aback. Like, those sorts of things make a huge difference. Yep. And just, give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not saying tolerate bad behavior. Like, we hold us accountable, but you have no idea the officer that you're running into out on the mall, or it could have just come from a horrific, death scene or something, where just saying thank you for your service or buying them a cup of coffee, that makes so much of a difference. It's super helpful.
And Boulder is a community where a lot of people are here, have in one fashion or another, accumulated some wealth. Mm-hmm. The other thing you do is show your appreciation by contributing.
To
the Police Foundation. So tell us about the Police Foundation. What is what it has enabled you to do? Some of the programs, like the Canine program that it helps fund. We find ourselves encouraging a lot of our friend circle to come to the gala, but also to lean in, to reach in their pocket, write a check.
I appreciate it. It's been so cool. So in Aurora, we had a police foundation. A lot of bigger cities have foundation. When I got here, I wanted to start one. The to-do list is long, and it was on the back burner. And we had people through Cindy and others come and say, "Hey, we'd love to be able to support starting a canine program again." We didn't have one in the community.
And the canine program was really you guys saying that's what you want, what you would look for.
We definitely, with especially what we started with our current dog, Astro. Astro is an explosive sniffing dog and also can sniff firearms and recently fired ammunition. With all the events we have, we were calling outside dogs to come in, and that's a really important thing to have, and we didn't have that. And so it's one of the things we wanted to restart. Well, we were able to do that through donations. And the dog's name Astro is incredible too, because Cindy shared, I'm sure she'd be comfortable with you sharing a very personal story that she had met Officer Eric Talley here shortly before he was killed, and he had made an impact on her.
And let people know who Eric Talley was and what happened with
Officer Eric Talley was killed running into the mass shooting at a grocery store here, King Soopers, in 2021. And it was deeply impactful in the community. And when people stepped up to donate money to restart the canine program, that was really I said, well, wait a second. I know, let's get this foundation started. So it's tax deductible, 501c3. And so we set up, got a group of people that were supportive and started this foundation. And the first donation was to get the canine program started. And we wanted to name Astro. Astro's a girl, female canine that is out there right now working. People said we should name her something that has to do in tribute with Eric, and Cindy was part of that. And the cops thought it was weird if we were going to name her Tally, because it was just, anyway, they didn't like that. And so he said, all right, what can we do? And somebody said, well, we asked Eric's family, his wife and children, and they said, well, he loved, we're like, tell us names. What he loved, the Houston Astros, and Astro just stuck, and it's got the astrological meaning. And so she's been awesome. She is done a ton of events. Sundance, it's going to be amazing. just to reassure the community. And I'll tell you when it's been even more impactful is since the attack. Every big public event, we've got Astro out there ahead of time sniffing to make sure somebody hasn't planted a device. So that's
Is Astro the only canine you have right now?
right now, but we've got approval to add a second dog this year. That dog will have some dual purposes, and that dog will be a patrol dog that will be capable in limited circumstances of apprehending criminals, which is, to me, super important because as much as I love dogs, what we've seen around the country is having those canines can save an officer from getting killed. Great purposes there as well. So maybe we're looking at maybe a search and rescue type capability too. So happy to have that second dog here in the near future. And again, that is coming predominantly from donations, which is so cool. The community invests in those things. It helps us. 'Cause every city right now is constrained fiscally. At least that's the state of affairs. The economic outlooks are a little dismal. So the city's worried about money right now and being able to ask us what we can maybe reduce, but we can still go to the foundation with cool programs. And so,
And what are some other programs
Yep.
that the foundation has participated in?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big one was the recruiting campaign. In fact, we had one of the reasons it was so successful is we hired a marketing firm that doesn't usually do police recruiting, and they said, what type of recruiter you're looking for? They set up a LinkedIn page. So we had great success with that. Did cool videos. The foundation's been supportive of a new program we have called the Blue Envelope Program. That is a way we can make sure that people with invisible disabilities in the community, it's a way they can present to an officer, that there's something different there. That's been great.
Explain what that means. So that's a new expression to me.
The Blue Envelope Program started back, I think back east somewhere, and we brought it to Colorado. We were the first department, and now almost every department is doing it. It's a blue envelope. It was mostly designed for motorists. Let's say somebody that may have, they're deaf of hard of hearing. They may have something like Tourette's syndrome, autistic, where we've had bad encounters around the country where an officer mistakes the disability for somebody being combative or resisting. Yeah. What this envelope does is when it's presented, they can write all their information on it. Inside the envelope, they can keep their registration, insurance, any documents, and then they can hand that to the officer, and the officer, in theory, then will go, oh, okay, I need to maybe come at this situation a little bit differently. So that's been an initiative that we didn't have any funding for, that we said, yeah, let's ask the foundation. And so when we have ideas, we don't get a blank check. We go to the foundation board and say, here's something we'd like funding for. And they, as community members and business leaders, can say, yeah, we're behind that. I'm trying to remember what other, the foundation one thing I really wanted to do is up our game when it comes to our yearly award ceremony. So we're recognizing officers for Medal of Valor and bravery and life-saving. And I wanted to make that more of a really cool formal night, and with a dinner and for families, as opposed to just at the police department, here's your certificate. And so we came to the foundation with that. And for 2 years now, the foundation has supported that and had food, and the families love it. So things like that have been really cool. We're looking at other needs that aren't funded. We're never going to ask for personnel or cars or things that, the city will fund just through normal course of business. But it's been a cool thing, and the officers keep coming up with great ideas of, hey, let's ask the foundation if they're willing to help with this. So
yeah, and I'll look at the camera for this one. So on behalf of me, kind of our family and our circles, thank you, Cindy, for leaning in on this. It's a big deal, and
yep.
It certainly makes me feel proud to be part of that.
Yep.
So let's look forward in time.
Okay.
Paint an optimistic picture of what we as, whether it's locally here in Boulder, whether it's the state of Colorado, whether it's more on a national basis, what can we strive to do to be a more collaborative, a less combative, a more constructive, to address some of the bigger problems that we face when it comes to not just law enforcement, but also people we're trying to serve, including the people in need. What's going to take for the country to rally around each other, as opposed to fight each other so much?
I'll tell you, we've talked talked about it a lot. And I mean, so many of us were just exhausted after 2020. And again, positive changes that came out of 2020, but COVID, everything else, we lost that face-to-face contact in many cases where, our officers had established good relationships in the community and, neighborhood groups and things, and we lost that overnight. And part of it is, number one, I think we do a really good job in Boulder, and it's my expectation that we're going to get out in the community and we're going to meet community members where they are. We understand there's some people that absolutely have no issue walking into a police department to some event, and then there's people that are fearful of the police. We've got to go out and meet people in the community. And what I would share, if that's not the case where you live, where you don't have that relationship with the community, have that conversation of like, hey, we're going to hold a barbecue in our neighborhood. We want officers to come out and meet our kids and have interactions. So then when it's not, and do that in what they call, the blue sky days, when nothing's wrong, we're not calling the police for help. And then when something happens, we already have those relationships and some trust. And the biggest thing that I've
let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So let's say someone wants to do that. They want to
Mm-hmm.
take you up on that. And they're like, yeah, remember, we're going to have some kind of gathering, neighborhood block party, whatever. Let's reach out. What
Mm-hmm.
specifically should they do to reach out?
Yeah, so most departments, real small departments may not. Most departments have a community resource section, a community engagement section. I think the small towns probably do it better than anybody. It's the bigger departments that tend to get real busy, but every department for the most part has a community policing unit. And if you're making calls to your local police department and saying, hey, we'd love to have you come to an event, and you keep inviting them, they don't come, then you need to have the conversation with electeds or the mayor or somebody else. Like, it's not an unreasonable request. And most departments right now should be jumping at the chance to come out. Maybe it's a staffing issue some places, but no, invite people to come and most of us, especially in the chief level, deputy chief, we are comfortable and used to having tough conversations. So if there's a reason that you don't feel comfortable inviting cops to come to your neighborhood barbecue, and it's because of this issue that happened, work through that. Like, call up the chief and say, hey, I'd like to have a meeting. And maybe it's to talk about difficult subjects, have the conversation. And I've seen it firsthand here, how it works, of getting across the table and having a conversation. Groups that are diametrically opposed, we're probably not going to walk out of there being best friends, but have those conversations at least to get to the point where we can have some sort of mutual respect, because so much is done on social media. I mean, the keyboard warriors, the next door, the Twitter. I mean, it is just so toxic.
It's going to get worse because it's easy to generate content with AI.
It's so toxic and it's so divisive. And by the time things get around, especially when an incident happens or something, you have the truth, but it's the old telephone game. So, doing that, ensuring and mandating that your police departments, your sheriff's department are hiring the right people. That is not unreasonable for the community to say, hey, you had this thing happen and we looked at it and this cop should have never been on the force. Like, why are you hiring people that are flawed? If that's the case. So there's a lot of conversations to be had. Optimistic worldview as we get back to, this goes back centuries to Sir Robert Peel, who, people will say is the father of policing. His quote, and it's actually, I just saw it in London at Scotland Yard. It is that the police are the community and the community are the police. That's exactly what we need to strive for. We can't be everywhere. Here in your neighborhood, we don't know necessarily who lives here, who doesn't, what vehicles belong. We need people to let us know what they're seeing. We got to work together. And then, hold us accountable. Absolutely. Hold us accountable. We are given the authority to potentially take someone's life. Like, that is a serious thing. Hold us accountable, but give us some grace. And don't assume because this whole high profile thing happened where there was one bad cop somewhere that's all cops. Like, you cannot paint police with a broad brush, just like we shouldn't be painting communities with a broad brush. Give us some grace and understand that our cops are absolute humans. They go home, their mothers, fathers, brothers, and it shouldn't be, an officer gets killed and then for a little while, I feel like people really, really are super supportive. And then don't go back to that, unless we completely don't deserve the trust and we don't deserve the respect, just give our cops some grace and understand that, absent a small percent of just flawed humans that shouldn't be cops and are just bad people, the majority of cops want the same thing everybody wants, like safety in the community. We don't want to have to go respond because somebody gets shot, dead. We want to work together. And that sounds super idyllic. You asked, my optimistic view. That's it is we can actually go around and have good conversations and people aren't flipping off the cop as they're driving down the street. Like, it's going to take some time to regain trust that's been lost. I think that's what we're striving for right now. but we can't just show up and say, hi, we're here to engage with you. Please be friendly with us. We've got to be invited into those spaces. And that's part of it. I think a lot of the onus is on us, and there's things historically we've done that have led to some of the distrust, but let us into those spaces, have the tough conversations. And you know what, we're doing it here with a lot of different liaison units. If you prefer to see an officer that looks like you or comes from your background, ask for that. Say, hey, we've got this meeting with this group and we'd love to, do you have an officer that's Muslim? Do you have an officer that's black? Do you have an officer that's gay? And most departments will say, yeah, we do. And we'll send them to interact. And at least, so jumping around a lot.
That's an interesting comment you just made there, because most people would be reluctant to say, I want an officer that is this or is that.
That's an easy ask. I have a friend she's back east in North Carolina. She's a county commissioner. She's African-American, and we had some interesting conversations. But she's like, yeah, I did a ride along with the fire department. I was like, when have you done a ride along with your cops? And she's like, I'm a black woman. I'm not getting in a police car. And I said, no, like you make funding decisions. Like, I get it. I said, but ask for a black officer. If you want a black female officer, is a bigger department. I guarantee they have officers they can put you with. And if you don't want, she's like, I don't know about a police car. Say, hey, I'd like to ride in an unmarked car. Those are not unreasonable, especially if it's to work to break down barriers. All you can do is ask, and you should. So there's a lot of reasons people may be uncomfortable, but ask the tough questions. At the end of the day, all we can say is, yeah, we can't accommodate that, but at least we'll give it a try.
So you mentioned, if a community is having a gathering, and you want to invite someone from, the local police, invite them.
Mm-hmm.
What could we bring you into, your members of your team into? What kind of things can we bring them into that they're like, hey, I kind of know how police works, I know how fire works, I know how local politics work, but there's a part of the world in our community I just don't have exposure to. I don't really know how it works, or those aren't the kind of people I tend to relate to. Like, what could we do for you or perhaps members of your team to bring them into stuff that they would get value out of that we otherwise might not think to invite them to? That's
a great point. And I mean, I don't know the answer. And maybe you can ask one of our younger officers. But no, I mean, like, I think of I'm so amazed with our younger officers that are coming on with their different passions and experiences. And, back when I started, all I wanted to do was work and get in a patrol car and go out and catch bad guys. I would sign up for every ounce of overtime I could take. Our younger officers, they want to come in, they do their shift, and then they want to go do what they enjoy, which is outdoor activities, those sorts of things. And so, like, for example, invite, hey, we're going to do this bicycle thing. Do you have any cops that want to come join us? I didn't know what it was, but there's a new studio opening up in town called Smash Paddle. It's kind of like, it looks like cricket and and they're opening up and they're like, hey, we want to host a night where your cops come in and try this out.
That's perfect.
Those sorts of things are super helpful.
Or we got a couple tea times at Boulder Country Club.
Exactly. We got to be careful that, there's no appearance of impropriety, gratuities and stuff, but inviting us to come to events, to do things. And our guys, we're starting a new one called Lifting with the Law. We've got a guy that's a big lifter. And
which, by the way,
this gym's going to sponsor. So,
60 pounds in each hand today.
Nice.
First time I got 60 up in a long time.
Very nice. We're hiring.
I would flunk your test.
No comment. So no, those kind of things. Don't think it's weird or silly. We've got officers that have tons of hobbies, and for me, I went and did a spin class. I'd never done one, and one of the studios said, "Hey, we want to sponsor and do a fundraiser." And I'm like, sure, I'll come embarrass myself on a bike. But those are the kind of things that are super fun. We struggle because a lot of our officers don't live in Boulder, so they don't necessarily get the opportunity to engage. So, oh man, anybody, if you feel like, hey, this is weird, I bet it's not, and I bet we'll have officers that'll be interested. So keep inviting us.
All right. Yeah. So I want you now to talk to people who are 18 to 25 years old. Okay, so that's who your message is this part. Whether it has to do with your specific line of work or just in general, what would you tell them as far as hey, you can listen to me, not listen to me, but let me give you some words of wisdom.
Oh man. Okay, and this comes from years of being a cop, and it also comes from just personal experiences. My life is spend time with the ones you love. I mean, I'll tell you this, it does go fast. And I mean, I sound like the old guy. Life goes by fast. It goes by so fast.
Plus, you've seen in your profession.
Yes. I have
tragic
seen what,
events.
people have all these plans and things change. Invest time, do fun stuff, go out, enjoy your life within reason, but, spend time with the people, cherish your parents and your grandparents if you're fortunate enough to have them in life. Things change like that. And I mean, that is a huge thing for me. And I look back on times where I wish I would have done more of that. But also like have fun within reason. Go out and do the crazy thing, take the trip, eat the thing that you don't want to eat. Like go out and just live your life because it is very precious. It's very short. And we see it firsthand in this profession, but also do something to benefit your community. Like, you know what, go do something that's, especially if you're fortunate and you're not worried about where your next meal comes from, go out and give back. Like you do something, nothing makes you feel better than public service or doing some sort of thing to benefit those that are less fortunate. Go out and you will not regret it. You will not regret it. And you want to look back on your life and I actually did some good while I was here. So,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, Brad Feld, who we both know, just published a book that is Give First. Is that the name of it? I forget the exact expression, but the whole book's about, just start by doing something for others and without it being transactional, without you expecting
100%.
that person to do something.
Yep.
And it'll pay off over time. This isn't pure kind of charity, pure good per se, but if you just live your life that way, you'll get the benefit from it. Don't worry about it being an exchange of, and I love using the word privilege and throwing it back at younger people because they like throwing it at people of my age. But pretty much anyone who's listening to this podcast probably has some privilege in terms of how they grew up and what their life is all about. So use that as an added sense of motivation to give back, to find ways of giving to your community, giving to those around you who probably need a reach out of one type or another.
We're all going to have that point in our lives and where we look back and really look back on what you did while you were here. And I think we all want to have that moment where we look back and we nod our head and go, yeah, I did some good. And it's why a lot of us get into this profession, but it's life is super precious and short. And sadly we see it all too often. So yeah, be that person that you want to look back on and say, I made a difference while I was here.
So we still have work to do in the Boulder community. I want Boulder community to just feel great for everyone in the community. Very inclusive statement. And by great, it starts with safety and security. Also starts with having a sense of pride when you have people visiting and they're walking around and visiting places. I got to say, from deep inside of me that as I've gotten to know you better, as I've gotten to know the police force better, and as I've seen the recent changes in the last handful of years, I feel more safe.
Good.
I feel more secure. I feel more pride, and I feel lucky and fortunate to have you as police chief, and and the public servants around you, what they're doing for us and what they're accomplishing. And I look for ways to contribute, in ways that that I'm able to help support what you're doing and the continued progression of what we're accomplishing.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I love coming to work every day, and it's a big part is the community support. It's a great place.
Good. Well, you're earning the support.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Bear Roars. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe on your listening platform. This podcast was produced by Loud Bear Productions and edited by Kendall Weinberg, with support from Gibson Seeger, Katie McDonald, and Elise Pettigrew.